representatives from industry whose job it is or will be to make H5N1 vaccine in the event of a pandemic, and to ask them explicitly, what are your research needs for vaccine development going forward? How much do they overlap with the gain-of-function experiments that are being envisioned? Perhaps some of them are useful to vaccine developers, perhaps some of them aren't. I have an open question still about whether continued research in increasing transmissibility of HPAI, H5N1 is necessary for future vaccine development. I think everyone likes to have it, but is it necessary in terms of vaccine development going forward for H5N1? My understanding, tell me if this isn't true, Robin, is that in the event of a future H5N1 pandemic, we're going to need that strain that's causing the pandemic to generate the vaccine that we make for the world. But in any event, I certainly don't make vaccines for a living, but I think the people who do make vaccines for a living should be heard in this debate if one of the primary justifications for going forward is vaccine development.
Dr. Pieris, would you like to have a response to that, please?
Yes, I mean, I think the benefits from this type of research is not to specifically identify the strain that's going to be matching the pandemic exactly, but number one, to prioritize the fact that a lethal virus such as H5N1 can become pandemic. Because if you just think back to 4 or 5 years ago, there was increasing belief that this virus had been kicking around for 14, 15 years. It has not made it so far, and it will never do so. I mean, from the work of Ron and Yoshi, and also when you look at the mutations they identified and look at the viruses that are out there in the environment, you can see that, in fact, a number of viruses, particularly the clade 2.2 viruses, have acquired a number of these. So there is only a few steps more to go. So it's prioritizing that as a problem, raising that higher up. Second, of course, also, it possibly focuses on particular clades. For example, again, clade 2.2 as going higher up in terms as a vaccine candidate.
But is it necessary, Malik, to use the highly transmissible pathogenic virus to do those studies?
If you wanted to answer the question of whether H5N1 can acquire mammalian transmissibility, there is no other way to do it other than use the highly pathogenic H5N1 virus. Now, if you're asking whether you could, for example, delete the cleavage site of that particular virus and do this with a less pathogenic strain, possibly, but I think by deleting the cleavage site, you change quite significantly the viral load, the replication characteristics. So it probably will not give you the crucial answer.
Please. Thank you.
Relative to vaccine production, for Tom's question, would these be, is there a direct effect there? Understanding what these mutations and other mutations may have regarding transmissibility and pathogenicity, but would they, in vaccine production, do they affect the ability to produce or manufacture that particular vaccine strain? We learned only too well during H1N1 as we went forward that the vaccine production was very slow as the virus was, we could adapt the virus. If we know ahead of time what those possible mutations are and be able to then see what their effect is of the ability to grow the virus, to make the vaccines, and even the effect of those in where we do not use the virus, the effect in producing those vaccines, it would make the availability of those vaccines much sooner. So there are contexts in which that can be done without being in an environment where they have to be in a high-risk situation. But we do need to know what the effects of those types of mutations in the actual production of the vaccines.
So would you recommend that the strains that have already been created or the strains that are to be created now go on into active study in terms of early vaccine development? Do you actually think that we should use those strains, or is that work now completed in your mind in terms of concept?
I mean, we certainly have learned already quite a bit, but as we go forward, given a particular, say, an H5N1 pandemic would occur, if we had, and they were to follow these signatures, mutations, we would already understand whether or not they would affect vaccine production in an adverse way. In other words, would we, in egg-based vaccines and cell-based vaccines, probably not as much in recombinant forms in other systems, but would they affect it? And what we would have to do already, we could already make those changes ahead to have higher production rates.
I just have one comment. Dr. Paris's comments. We're talking about the need to do this work in order to show or to prove H5N1 could be transmissible. I think there's a legitimate debate in the community about whether or not that was an important and justifiable aim for the research, about whether that work should have been done to prove the point that H5N1 could be human transmissible. Whether or not you agree with that point now, it has been proven. So the question there would be, do we need to continue to do more work, additional work, create additional strains, H5N1 transmissible strains, to prove that it can become human transmissible when that point is made? I don't think that continues to be a good justification for going forward.
Good morning. The one question that I have is Gary Monk from Hackensack, New Jersey, is we're tossing around biorisk, but in the laboratories that have been doing this work from bioassessment, have you developed a baseline on your laboratorians? Do you look for seroconversions to see if transmissibility within a contained environment is actually affording laboratory safety?
I think Ron, did you?
I cannot answer that question because our laboratory workers have been vaccinated against H5N1, and so it would be impossible to show seroconversion of those people because they have been vaccinated.
We'll take the first question here now.
Harvey Feinberg brilliantly pointed out at the time, in the 1970s...
Could you identify yourself,
Laurie
please?
Garrett from the Council on Foreign Relations in New York.
Thank you.
In the 1970s, we had a dominant theory that all biologists in the flu field believed in, of sort of historic cyclings of strains, and that there was a sort of timing predictability of when pandemics might occur. And that contributed to the over-response in 1976 to swine flu. Now I'm here